Fashion Tech Alliance involves higher educational institutions, small, medium and big enterprises and a research center. This project has been co-founded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union and is aimed to facilitate knowledge exchange between partners and to design and pilot learning experiences to engage students in a fashion tech residency program, embedding young talents in the company's innovation activities. A central objective of the project is to design multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary and intersectoral learning activities involving international students from 5 European universities. The contents of the lectures have been specifically created to match the needs of fashion tech learning. They have become open educational resources to allow future engagement between a European-wide fashion and textile HEI community and are available under Creative Commons Sharealike 4.0 with the aim of a wide and free distribution, access, use and reuse. Ready to learn more about fashion tech? Enjoy the lecture.
Hello everyone, my name is Olga Chkanikova and I'm working as a lecturer in textile management at the University of Borås in Sweden. Today I will be giving you the lecture on the role of policy making and on the role of digital institutions to support the scaling of the digital social innovation. And I would like to start with outlining the table of content for today's lecture. First, I would like to provide you with a definition of digital social innovation and sort of major principles or characteristics that it has. And it is basically quite a broad definition that also encompasses the fashion tech solutions for tackling the sustainable developmental challenges that you will be addressing. But I think the definition is very broad and it encompasses a number of principles that help you in understanding which direction and which area of the social area the innovation that you will be developing can potentially target. I will provide you with a definition, with the concept of institutions and digital institutions and provide some examples of it in the context of digital platforms. And then we'll talk about how one, building on this institutional perspective, can theorize about digital social innovation and scaling of the fashion tech sustainable solution as the process of institutional change, and then sort of how the institutional design, the institutional layers has to be considered in order to help grow, diffuse, and scale these solutions that you will be developing. And finally, we'll talk about the role of various policy tools that can be employed to support the digital social innovation. So the definition of the digital social innovation, it is a type of social and collaborative innovation in which innovators, users, and communities collaborate using digital technologies to co-create knowledge and solutions for a wide range of social needs, and at a scale and speed that was unimaginable before the rise of the internet technologies. What is very specific to this definition is that digital social innovation has a social impact. So it tackles the social challenges, it addresses the social needs, it generates the social value. But it also, of course, generates the user values and it generates the financial values, which is also very important for financing and growing and sustaining the innovative solution. These social innovations, they adopt technology in a novel way. Technologies are adopted to facilitate the collaboration, the co-creation of the knowledge and solutions together with individuals with grassroots communities. And there is also the aim of empowering citizens for individual and collective awareness. And also the aim to mobilize the civic action on the behalf of these individuals and communities. The digital social innovation solution can be also characterized by the decentralized infrastructure. You can call it decentralized architecture. So it's not top-down control, but it's provides sort of decentralized nodes for its development in order to support and work with grassroots communities of users. And digital social innovation demonstrate clear network effects. So the more users join the solution, the more user value is generated, and the more also social value is generated. The social value grows much more disproportionately in comparison to the to growth of the initiative. The example of network effects, for example, in the case of peer-to-peer collaborative economy models such as closed library. So the more users join this sharing network, the more the supply of the clothes and the higher the chances that this platform will efficiently meet the individual user needs. So the match their requirements from the wider supply of the clothes that is made available for swapping or reselling. And it also provides user value because it increase access to maybe cheaper clothes that otherwise will not be available. And at the same time, it also generates the social value in terms of reducing the textile waste, prolonging the life cycle in the user phase of the clothing. And also it facilitates the social interaction. In terms of the landscape of the digital social innovation projects, they has been crowd mapped in the EU, and you can see that they scatter across the number of social areas. And also they use diverse technologies, and very often not just one technology is used, but a combination of technology options. Majority of projects, of digital social innovation projects that currently exist in Europe, they are sort of in the field of education, skills, in participation and democracy, to create the digital democracy participation tools, provide more transparency to the public policy making, but with the less projects actually being in the area to address the environmental problems. And many technologies that are used nowadays, they are less high-tech, and they're more sort of established technologies such as social networks, social media, mobile and web applications. And of course, there's certain technologies that are more promising, that they are less engaged, but they still start gaining the momentum, and these technologies are blockchain, big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Finally, what also should be mentioned is that the different projects that has been mapped, digital social innovation projects in the European Union, they're very scattered and they're very fragmented. There is very little connection between them, also not so much knowledge on behalf of the digital innovators in terms of, what partners with the right expertise and tacit knowledge of developing digital social innovation are available. And they are also very, these projects, they are unevenly distributed geographically. Some of them are, many of them are located in Western and Southern Europe, and much less is located in the Eastern and Northern Europe. In order to understand how the technological transition happens, it is important to understand that technological innovation occurs at the different levels. And it is a highly social process, because the new technology, when it emerges in the specific protected place, in the specific niche where the conducive environment exists for this technology innovation to occur, it's sort of course, for reaching the mainstream practices, it interacts with the existing socio-technical regime that comprise of existing market practices, user practices, sectoral policies, existing knowledge and skills on the behalf of users and market actors. It interacts with sort of existing infrastructure, and of course this sort of set of the contexts in terms of practices, policies, infrastructure, value systems that prevail in this socio-technical regime. It's not always create the conducive environment for technological innovation to grow from the niche to the mainstream. And also there is the broader landscape, the broader field in which organizations and industries are embedded. It is a sort of a cultural context, it's existing international policies that also can be constraining for the technological innovation to grow and diffuse. So thinking about technological innovation and digital social innovation, which is basically using technology and technology innovation to solve the societal challenges, is a highly social process. So if you want to deliver the digital social innovation at scale, it is important to think of the broader societal context and socio-technical regimes that include the existing practices, policies, infrastructures, cultures, and value systems. All these norms, rules, practices, this is in other words, constitute the institutional environment. The more specific concept or definition of the institution is provided on these slides. Institutions are the formal and informal rules that organize social, political, and economic relations. Institutions are basically the rules of the game. They can be written, formal in the forms of laws, contracts, and codified standards. They can be unwritten in the form of informal rules, norms, customs, and traditions, but they are basically the rules of the game that enable and constrain certain behavior they basically explain behavior and coordinate relationships between individuals and between the groups. And of course, they provide a certain stability and meaning to social life. They also have a tendency to co-evolve and change over time. And this is also why but some of the institutions such as norms, customs, and traditions, or laws and regulations, they change much slower than others, such as maybe standards and contracts. The other thing is that institutions should not be confused with organizations. Of course, organizations, they are the actors, they are the institutional actors who play according to the rules of the game. And sometimes they can engage in the practices where they, initiate the crafting of the certain institutions. They start collaborating, they start lobbying, they start some collective action for certain rules of the game to be established, because they see them as important to facilitate the market efficiency, for example. There are three pillars of institutions, or elements of the institutions. These are regulatory, normative, and cultural cognitive. The regulatory is basically rules, the normative are norms, and the cultural cognitive is basically the meanings that people create through interaction with certain symbols, with certain objects, sort of the meaning that we create via interaction with our social reality. This is usually taken for granted, and it's sort of meanings that are socially shared, and this provides the basis for the practices that we very often undertake without questioning of whether it's right, it's wrong, it's efficient, it's not efficient. This is something what we do all the time. Norms is actually the institutions that are associated with doing what is felt as morally right, what is viewed as appropriate, what give you a feeling of being honored rather than shamed. Norms are basically, they're not non-compliance with norms will not necessarily result in some legal sanction and penalty, but of course it will, if you're not compliant with a certain norms, your behavior will be viewed as inappropriate. And nowadays there are certain standards with which, if we don't comply, this is usually viewed as incorrect behavior. And for example, if certain suppliers these days are not compliant with certain environmental or social criteria, then some companies might even decide not to continue their relationships with this type of the suppliers. So they are sometimes they are not mandatory, but they could be the de facto mandatory rules for participation in the markets. And then there are the regulatory institutions in the form of rules, laws, and sanctions. So these are basically the rules that are established based on the logic of instrumentality or rationality. This is basically the rules that are considered efficient means to achieve the desired ends. And here, of course, you very much think about what is rational to quickly and efficiently solve the problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what is rational is what is viewed as appropriate or right. So these three pillars, they are core elements of the institutions. They are conveyed, they are transmitted through certain institutional carriers, such as artifacts or objects. And let's even say that the digital technology that we use, it has its own rules that are built into it, some sort of digitized routines, transactional routines, payment routines, routines and rules of how we interact with sort of digital web applications. So that means that these digital objects and digital technologies, they are the artifacts that carry the certain institutions. Of course, the institutions are ingrained in our daily activities, practices, routines, in our relationships between the individuals and also relationships that exist between and within organizations. And it is also a symbolic system. You can think about symbolic system as certain ceremonies that exist, certain customs, certain traditions that are followed. What happens when digital technology starts interacting with the broader societal context and start changing our practices, our maybe even norms for what efficient or what is the appropriate behavior. What happens is that it causes the institutional change, that some practices becomes adjusted, they change, some practices maybe become institutionalized or broken down, and maybe the completely new practices emerge that wasn't in place before. Before the use of the digital technology. So digitalization process basically causes digital institutions to emerge. And digital technologies are both carriers and outcomes of the institutions. They reshape rules, norms, and meanings, and they are also a result of the socio-technical trends in the society. Here is, how one can define what the digital institution is. Digital institution is an assembled mix of technical and institutional components that are in part an evolutionary outcome and in part a product of human intervention and design. In digital institutions, basically, these regulative, normative, and cognitive pillars, norms, rules, and meanings, and their careers, such as daily practices, routines, relationships, are interwoven with digital technologies. The emergence of digital institutions is basically about how practices of organizations, but also practices of the individuals, are reshaped and codified as digital technologies start performing them or parts of them. Finally, what is also important is that institutions, they operate at the different levels. At the micro individual level, at the meso, which is organizational level, and at the macro level, at the level of this broader institutional field or landscape, that include sort of policies, national and international regulations, cultural contexts. Digital technologies affect and are affected by existing institutions, and they are carriers at all three levels. So the propensity to adopt them and the ability to adopt them for generation of the positive social and environmental impacts is affected by existing societal context at all these three levels. Digital social innovation can be conceptualized as institutional change at all of these levels. So in order to allow the digital social innovation to grow and scale, one should think about changes in the rules, norms, meanings, routines, practices that are required. One have to think about the context in terms of these rules, norms, and meanings and practices that currently exist and that could be constraining or could be enabling for adoption and sustaining of the innovation. For delivering digital social innovation at scale, there is an importance of aligning digital institutions basically at all three levels. So let's now talk about digital institutions in the context of digital platforms. So this could be the digital platforms, the digital collaborative platforms that are enabling, the digital transaction and, new marketplaces, or the digital platforms that provide open access to the certain technology, to the certain software that can be used to facilitate innovation. So what institutions and institutional layers surround this solution of the digital platform? So there is different layers. Of course, all of these layers, they are basically digital institutions, but one could think about, the digital institutions as digitized routines and rules that are designed based on the digital affordances of the platform. And the example of this is algorithmic decision-making, technical standards, interoperability standards, the digitized transactions itself, the digitized payment routines and rules. So these are basically the digitized institutions, rules of the game that are built in the platform. You can think about it as a technical architecture of the platform. The next layer is that, of course, this platform, it involves human intermediation, and there is the human intermediation at the individual level, so with each user individually. And here, when the user use and engage in using the digitized routines that are built in the platform, it means that it enables their another institutional layer, such as digitally enabled institutions. This is routines and rules that involve human intermediation. And the example of this is users' interaction with the app, maybe someone else in order to grant the user access to the platform, check on their identity and credential. And also there are certain adjudication practices to resolve the conflict and take the deactivation decisions that are, also involve human intermediation. There is a third level that is associated actually with the meso institutional level, because this is the institutions that are at the level of the business model. And it's basically about how the organization that builds the digital platforms, how in the context of the business model, it interacts with different actors in its business ecosystem in order to also grow, sustain its competitive advantage. So it's about rules and routines associated with the organization of the business model of the platform company. These basically govern the participation in the platform. And maybe this is also many rules that should be considered in the business model design, many principles that should be considered in the business model design that facilitate the collaboration and facilitate many users joining the platform. So for example, the example of it's the rules of who and how can use the platform, who gains and controls what, but it also could be the certain rules and principles of the open access, of the open data. And then there is a macro level, which is basically stakeholder relation institutions. It's about rules and routines that are associated with a broader societal level. So the rules that coordinate relations with governments, NGOs, and other market and industries. And these rules also should be followed, and certain rules maybe could be crafted by the companies. They can structure their relationships in a way to facilitate the changes in the landscape that they see as important for growing and scaling the impact. So, importance of the digital institutions for scaling the impact. Basically, it is important to consider various institutional layers associated with the solution that you develop, including rules, routines, and relationships that it enables, or that need to be in place to augment its positive and minimize the negative impacts for development. And there is the need to focus on institutions that facilitate the collaboration and networking. So let's now think about some examples of scaling via assuming the institutional design of the digital platforms. We're thinking about these institutional layers of the digital platforms and how rules and principles and routine in these various different levels should be adjusted in order to facilitate the growth and scaling, collaboration and network effects. So, for example, digital and digitally enabled institutions. This is very much related to the individual level, and and can be related to affecting the user behavior. Their cultural roots and value systems. So it's about establishing the digitized routines and rules that are convenient, that enhance efficiency, personal gains, and provide equal opportunities for participation. It is also about considering how new routines are adjusted to the targeted group of users, to their knowledge, to their technology literacy skills and their value systems. And if, for example, it appears that there is a digital skills gap. So it's maybe that your solution could provide some boundary resources, some information, education services that address the digital skills gap. And it's of course about design of the convenient solution that really target the user needs or create opportunities for the users to enhance the value generation. It is about, if we think about scaling out as a part of scaling logic and impacting greater numbers. So again, here, thinking about the digital platforms and its institutions. So one perhaps have to think about the business model, institutional layer. So and think about, okay, so what is the core driving philosophy to facilitate the participation, collaboration, and network effects? So it's the principles of the open access, open source, crowdsourcing, and crowdfunding. It's the rules of also participation in the platform that create conducive environment for collaboration. So it's understanding whom to include, who should be your key actors to help you scale the impact, who gains and controls what, because certain platform-based initiatives, they didn't scale because users or actors who were supposed to join the platform felt that there are lots of issues like inequalities in terms of gains distribution, inequality or unclear uncertainty about the data management, data sharing, and privacy issues. So all of these rules, they have to be thought of at the business model level as well in order to create this collaboration between various type of innovators, users, and grassroots communities. And also thinking about the stakeholder relationships, institutions. So this institutional layer is sort of important for pursuing the scaling up strategies, impacting laws and policies. So one could think about, okay, so here is the policy landscape, and here is what we're missing. There's certain standards that we couldn't develop our own, but that requires a collaborative action together with various public agencies, or maybe there are certain regulations or certain economic instruments that need to support the idea generation, growing, and scaling of the digital social innovation. So once you have the understanding of this broader landscape, macro institutional field, you start crafting your relationships and rules of stakeholder relationships that are associated with improving or creating necessary regulations and policies. And finally, let's talk about the policy support for digital social innovation. Here on this slide, you can see that one could think about the 7 stages of innovation, even though the innovation is a rather messy process with lots of feedback loops, and certain stages, they're not consequential, they can happen simultaneously. But anyhow, one could think about the different stages of identifying opportunities and challenges based on understanding current crisis situation, challenges or opportunities that exist, by getting some evidences from existing socio-technical trends. So you analyze the existing context, the existing situation, to identify opportunities and challenges for certain solution. And then, of course, there is a generation of lots of ideas that could be used together using various design methods. And then later, one should start creating some, perhaps prototypes, some randomized controlled testing in order to see which ideas are more feasible and viable, and through that come to the idea of specific case that is viewed as the case on which one should focus to deliver and implement. And then delivering and implementing is basically about developing the business models, about making the digital social innovation financially viable, so it can sort of sustain itself on the market in the existing socio-technical regime. And then it's about how to grow and scale its impact, sort of various strategies, various policies that are needed, and that might even require the systemic changes. And of course, once you're thinking of strategies that can help you, change the system, this is where sort of the major scaling impact can be achieved. When we think about the various policy tools and various policy goals, they could be, applied at the different stages to sort of help identify the good ideas, to help to grow and spread the digital social innovation, to help increase its potential value by making available supporting infrastructure, and then it's also about thinking of changing the system, and reinventing the existing approaches to money, to consumption, to education, to health. In terms of the specific policy support tools that can be used, this is the economic instruments. And the examples include, of course, the public direct funding, including the seed funding, the crowdfunding, and also challenge prizes. If you think about the seed funding, so it's a funding for ideas that are in the very initial step of its conceptualization, to let it sort of make the case and then seek funding later for growing and the development. It's about crowdfunding also, where you make lots of different innovators and users and civil society actors to participate in maybe selecting the ideas that could later mature and that can be implemented. And also it could be challenge prizes that also provide a good incentive for experimentation with the new ideas. So this type, some types of the funding can be allocated at the very initial stages of the development, just to facilitate the inception phase of the digital social innovation. Then, of course, there is the instrument of including innovative solutions in the public procurement, and this is perhaps already once the solution is already established and in the way that it sort of made the case. Then you can help it grow and diffuse by including it in the public procurement contracts. And also the contracts itself could be based on the principles of open source procurement to further facilitate the sort of competition, the healthy competition between innovators. And of course, what is very important is to provide certain tax incentives, some tax breaks for research and development for social innovation. Currently this is not in case, but there are certain tax incentives and breaks for other research and development projects. Regulation and legal frameworks. So this is basically a lot about creating the frameworks that facilitate collaboration and networking. That is a prerequisite for scaling the digital social innovation. So it's about open standards, about developing standards on the basis of participatory approach, including not only powerful actors in the decision making, but also marginalized groups. And it's also ensuring the principle of interoperability at the core of the technical infrastructure development. So one could think about various application and programming interfaces, standards that are developed for helping innovators to build a variety of complementary services that enhance the value of the social tech. It's about open data, and of course data sharing is very important for coming with idea of the product or service, understanding what is needed, and open data could be also important at the phase of the diffusion, because you share the information, you share the knowledge, you share the data that provide sort of the diffusion through learning. But of course, these open standards and open data specifically, it has lots of negative connotations in terms of how data are used, for what purposes, what is about privacy implications for the individuals and organizations. So definitely, in order to share the data, to collaborate in data sharing, which is also very important for scaling the digital social innovation, you need regulations in place that concern the data management, data ownership, and privacy rules. It's about also creating legal frameworks for open access to ensure inclusion and equality. And you can think about open access to, again, data and results of the public funded projects. It can be also thought of open access of developers or communities to the source code or certain technologies and certain softwares. Of course, there is a need for research and innovation support. Through this can be achieved through open and decentralized infrastructure that provide robust, equal, and society-wide access to connectivity. It's about creating experimental innovation spaces and labs which are harnessing the power of collaboration and based on the principles of the public-private partnerships in order to match right actors with right expertise, resources, and also provide some co-financing mechanisms. And then it's about also social venture incubators and accelerators, which also can receive support in the form of additional, funding in order to grow and scale the digital social innovation. Very important is the information provision, public policy tools in the form of dissemination and learning. So it's about establishing digital social innovation networks that map and provide information and communicate about existing digital social innovation projects. Again, partners with the relevant expertise so that different innovators can be connected. And it's also providing information about the diversity of policy instruments that could be used to accelerate the generation of ideas and accelerate the growth of the innovation itself. What is very important is also training and education to address the digital skill gaps at the individual and at the organizational levels. And finally, it is very important that policy instruments, policymakers, they help and focus on the developing of the evaluation tools, various impact assessment frameworks that provide the evidence that social tech for sure delivers the social impacts and the social impacts at scale. So it's the evidence building which also provide the inspiration for uptake and diffusion of the innovation, but it also can, this impact assessment framework, they can provide a feedback loop in terms of understanding the criteria that should be developed and the standards that should be established based on which the digital social innovation should be developed. So thank you very much for your attention and goodbye.